All right, welcome back to another edition of the Franklin Community High School Career Exploration Project. I am joined today by Jimmie McMillian, and Jimmie is the Chief Diversity Officer and Senior Corporate Counsel for Penske Entertainment. Now, you say that, Penske Entertainment, but to me, I hear Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar, which is why this is fantastic. So, Jimmie, first of all, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate having you on here.
I appreciate the opportunity, Brian, and hello to all the students at Franklin. This is a great opportunity to talk about the greatest racetrack in the world and the world's best job.
So why don't you just tell everyone what the Chief Diversity Officer and Senior Corporate Counsel is and does, and kind of how you got to this position?
All right, no problem. I have two full-time jobs, so I'll start that I'm a lawyer by trade, and back in 2002, I graduated from law school and went to work for the Indiana Supreme Court as a law clerk for Justice Frank Sullivan on the Supreme Court, which is a position where you actually write the cases that maybe some of you read about in history classes. And then I did that for 2 years, and then I went to a law firm called Barnes and Thornburg, which was one of the largest law firms in the state, and worked as a litigator, trying cases. Did that for 12 years, became a partner at that firm. And I always had a passion for motorcycles. Racing was always a sport of mine that I really loved and was passionate about, one of my favorite sports. And did some things with the Speedway from the community side and started to think, man, I really want to merge my passion, which was racing and motorsports and cars and bikes, with my profession, which is being a lawyer. So while I was at Barnes, I started a motorsports practice group, had no clients, just started going to events and races, and people told me, wear a suit, to these races, and people will start asking you and think you're somebody important because you're a black guy walking around with a suit on. And sure enough, that happened, and I started getting clients just from doing that. And eventually said, you know what, I want to do this full time. And there was a position that was open here. I had networked with some folks over here. Like I said, I had a relationship. 7 days after they posted the position, I interviewed and got the job and became the lawyer for the track and the lawyer for the series. In that position, what I do is work for everything legal related to the track and everything risk related. I tell people that my job is to make sure people come here happy, leave here happier, and are safe while they're here. So everything from sanctioning agreements, facility agreements, event agreements, releases, waivers, contracts with drivers, teams, contracts with people we sponsor, and our licensing of our wing and wheel and our logo and our marks, merchandise, food, everything that it takes to put on our events, everything it takes to run this place and run this series, not only here in Indianapolis, but at the other 17 locations that we race at, I put my hands on and do and work on. And so it's a great practice, particularly in what's called sports and entertainment law. We all know what happened when George Floyd was murdered in 2020. And so after that, that was also around the same time that Roger Penske, our new owner, purchased the track. I've been working in diversity and inclusion all my life, but we felt like we needed to do something more formal. And so I sat down with Roger Penske and Mark Miles and created the Race for Equality and Change, which is our D&I inclusion initiative, not only for our business, but for all of motorsports. And then later that year, Roger named me to be the Chief Diversity Officer and Senior Corporate Counsel. And in that diversity officer role, what I do is look at a number of programs and initiatives that we have, from our own hiring practice to who we work with on the procurement side and who we do business with, making sure we're doing business with minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, to who's actively working with all of our teams, whether a driver, engineer, owner, marketing person, or lawyer, to make sure that they are truly diverse. The sport has gotten an unfortunate reputation for being a white sport, which nobody in the sport believes or wants to be the case. And so we are doing everything we can to make sure our events are more inclusive, our sport is more inclusive, the jobs that we have are more inclusive, and where we spend our money is more inclusive. So that is what I do as the Chief Diversity Officer.
So with those jobs, I mean, both of those are full-time, like you mentioned. How do you do that? How do you juggle those two jobs? I mean, I'm assuming you don't work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, but I'm sure sometimes there are a little bit longer weeks than others. How do you juggle those?
I actually have some pretty long days, but passion drives me. And that's the great thing about this job. I have the type of job that I can't wait to get to work in the morning, and I regret when I leave in the afternoon because I wish I had more hours to do what I do. I have not had a one bad second at work, not one bad second at work since May 2nd, 2016, when I came to the track. It's absolutely phenomenal. Everything I pick up, everything I touch, everything I work on, I absolutely love. The leadership we have here, the people we have here, and the race days. And when you see people come out, whether it's the Indianapolis 500 or whether it's one of our SCCA or we're about to have SRO, one of our smaller events, you see how much it means for people to be here and be happy and do what they love and the passion they have. And it drives you as a lawyer and a diversity officer to do what you do. So there are some pretty long days, but I can tell you that I don't regret any of it. It's one thing to work a long day and you hate your job. It's a whole other thing to work a long day and you love your job. And I love it.
Good. So now on the race days, I would assume for the race day part of it for you wouldn't be as stressful. Would that be kind of accurate? I mean, a lot of people on your side, like in the Speedway, maybe like the marketing communications department would have a more of a stressful race day. Would yours be less, or would I be wrong on that?
Well, the most stressful part is all of your friends and family members calling you for the time for the time the cannon goes off, or calling you asking where to park and telling you they're here, but they don't know where here is at, and begging and pleading for you to come visit them. So you spend a lot of time running around on the golf cart trying to find people who can't describe where they're at or their first time coming, and they're just amazed at everything, how big everything is, and that's the joyous part of the job. I used to work. Your students may know about a little place that we have called the Snake Pit. And the Snake Pit exists in Turn 3, and we have an EDM concert where about 55,000 folks watch the race, young people, and it's all electronic dance music. And so for at least the first 5 years, I was in charge of the Snake Pit in terms of determining whether things had gone too far. And you talk about stressful, it's an exciting place where a lot of things go on that probably shouldn't. And trying to manage that with our security staff and our music team and our concert team. I wouldn't call it stressful as much as I would call it extremely active. And there were a lot of prayers said. And so I ended up bouncing back and forth from the concert area to the hospital to where my family, which is my mom and kids, they have an entourage of about 50 or 60 people that watch the race. So I'm bouncing back and forth between those areas and communicating with folks about risk management and making sure that we're doing things in a safe way and nobody's getting hurt and we're taking care of people if they've had a little bit too much fun, that we're making sure we're getting taken care of, they're getting taken care of and getting back to the same place. But, for those who don't know, we do throw the largest single day sporting event in the world. Our capacity sellout is 420,000 people. We average about 320,000 people on race day. It's 280,000 people in the stands. And it is an amazing thing to see and be a part of and witness. It's like going to Disney World and then one day I'm the lawyer for Disney World, and that's how it feels.
I tell you, when I went back this year after missing it for a year, my wife has a video of me in the stands, and I'm just like, you can hear it's on the pace lap, and I'm just standing there and just like looking back and forth just like this, and I had I don't know if whatever. I had nothing to drink. Like I don't really drink, so I had nothing to drink. But it was just, she said, "I've never seen you with so much nervous energy," and I said, "I've been away from this for almost 2 years, and this is killing me." And it was just like, it's just such a rush. So okay, so back to your career. We could sit here and talk about the Speedway and the 500 forever, but for your job, the education, you said you got your law degree in 2002. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what led up to that point, kind of what led you into law? And I know for a fact that you have kind of a crazy story how you got from Michigan to Indiana. So just kind of touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm from the South Side of Chicago, born and raised, and growing up, my mother had me in the church, and people used to say either you're going to be a pastor or a lawyer, and I think I liked girls too much in high school to go the pastor route, so lawyer was what was left. I actually hated math. And did not think I was good at it. Looking back on it, I wish I had spent more time on it, but I think I bailed on math and really liked history and reading. And so that backed up the lawyer thing as well. I love Matlock and some of the lawyer shows, and so those shows made me think, hey, that seems like a cool career. And everyone always talked about lawyers with like this air of respect. And so I thought, man, one day I'll be a lawyer. I did really well in high school because my father was an alcoholic, and my mother always worked as a school teacher, but my father never worked. And every now and then we'd be on the run. So every year we'd run to Mississippi. I'd have to start school down there. We'd literally leave the house with no clothes on. I'd have no clothes, underwear on, and this was all the way through high school. But my mother let me graduate at 15. I went to college. I went to Michigan State, and pledged my fraternity at 16. Was super young, back when Doogie Howser was out. That was kind of me. And while I was there, problems still persisted at home. My father came to Michigan State, threatened to shoot me in the dorm. I hid out in Detroit. I had a stepbrother that went to Indiana University. He came and got me from Detroit. And 3 months after I got to IU, Indiana University, Bloomington, my father shot my mother 3 times, and I flunked out of school. And so went from being the superstar kid to flunking out, which had nothing to do with my academic ability, but it had to do with life. And that's often the case. And worked odd jobs, worked at Best Buy, ended up working at Firestone, changing tires, worked my way up to manager, and got back in school. My mother lived and worked really hard. They wouldn't let me come back in the classroom. I had to take independent study classes, meaning I had to take classes at home and send my grades to an unknown teacher, and they graded it. Got straight A's when I got back in college, made straight A's and B's my first year back, straight A's my second year back, and graduated and still only had a 2.4 GPA. And people told me, you're not going to get in law school, and you're not going to remember anything else from this. I would say, look, when you've done all the best you can, still try, because all they can do is tell you no. Pray and do your best, and somebody will give you a shot. And that's exactly what happened. I applied to 9 law schools and got accepted to 7, and went to IU McKinney School of Law here in Indianapolis. Did extremely well in law school. Graduated with a 3.5 GPA, and like I said, went to clerk and went to a firm and came here. But there was a point in time in my life where there's no way I could see any of this coming. And if you had asked me, I'd have thought, I'd told you were crazy. Like, I was just hoping to be able to make my check for the next week, or pay my bills in my house, or just be able to make it and survive. And to know that I made it here, I just want to be a testament to everybody that don't give up on yourself. If you know what you need to do, you got to take the time, make the sacrifice, and do it. But do it. And there are people who will back you, and who will, I've had a ton of mentors and advocates who helped me get to where I'm at right now, because they saw that I was serious about being successful. And once they saw that, they were willing to invest and put everything they could into me to help me. So that's how I got here.
Yeah. Now I think it's a good story too for kids, is that you talked about how you flunked out, but then you came back and you had A's and B's, but your grade point average was still low. So I think it's a good lesson for kids. You've got to, from your freshman year all the way through, you have to, just how hard it is to dig out of that hole if you do start off kind of lazy.
And then
not in your case, you were lazy, but in other students, obviously.
Yeah, but I mean, and no matter what the reason is, I had good grades in the beginning. I had great grades in the beginning. Then I had this period of time where I just had a horrible 0 points, and then I transferred. And so I had A's when I first got to college, my first year. Then it's bombed out 0 point F's because I just stopped going to class because my mom got shot, and I just didn't want to go to class. So I just basically 0 point in semesters.
That makes sense.
And then got back in. But the key is being able to, you're going to have to write essays that tell that story. And, whether it's applying to college or applying to law school or applying to a program, being able to say, look, I know the number looks like this, but there's a reason. And being able to say, hey, I didn't give up. I tell my sons all the time, I learn more about you when you're challenged and how you overcome challenge, how you overcome difficulty, than when you're winning and everything is easy for you. Everybody can celebrate and do well when something's easy. But when I want to see you fail and I want to see you overcome it, I want to see you go through a situation where you would come to me and lie, but because I've trained you to be a great man, you come to me and tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's nothing to be ashamed of in failure. Every great leader fails. Every great leader has a down. It's about what do you do after the loss, after the down. How do you handle it? How do you come back from it? And the people that are able to keep coming back time and time again from loss and failure are the people that folks want to hire. They want to pay a lot of money to, and they want to invest and develop and train because they know that they won't quit. And not quitting is the whole game of life.
Yeah, it's like you said when applying to all those law schools, the worst they can tell you is no. So that's great advice for that. Now, as far as your job goes, you said you've never had a bad second at work. Now, I believe that, but there have to be some things that you don't necessarily like about it, or maybe not this job. Maybe you don't. I'm sure Roger Penske will watch this and kind of take some notes. But maybe there's some things as far as a lawyer goes in general that you don't like. So what are some of the cons of that, and what are some of the things that you do really like?
Well, in this job, there really aren't a whole lot of things that I don't like, other than obviously we're trying to make the sport more diverse, and I wish there were more opportunities for people of color, not just in the car driving, but throughout our industry. I look at where African Americans, Latinos, uh, LGBTQ, Asians, where a lot of them are situated, and the barriers that have existed that prevent them from having the opportunities and really create wealth disparity. And those are the things that we're working on. Those are the things that I don't like. And those are the things that we're trying to do something about, is how do we equalize the playing field so that your students of color who work just as hard as maybe your white students are viewed at and have the opportunities to come in and enjoy the life that I have right now. I want everyone to feel like this at work. Being a lawyer can be tough. When I was at the firm, a lot different situation because I worked on billable hours, and that means I worked on time. So I would bill my clients in 6-minute increments. Every 6 minutes, I had to write down, what was I doing? If I picked up the phone and made a phone call, that was a bill, and it'd be 0.1. My rate at that time, I think when I left, was $400 an hour, $425 an hour. So if I spend an hour working for you, you owe me $425. And it was always about how much time I needed to bill to make the law firm happy versus my clients, who obviously don't want me to spend that much time at all. There was this conflict of my personal interest of billing time and my client's personal interest of me getting whatever I need to get done for them as quickly as I needed it to get done. And I hated that, especially once my clients were my friends. Some lawyers, now in my situation now, I really get paid for the value I provide, not the time I spend. If it takes me 10 minutes to get something done, everybody's happy because that's valuable, because we're not here to practice law. We're here to get people out on the track to race, and people eating turkey legs, and people, cheering loudly, not to do legal work all day. And that fits my personality better. I think the challenges of being a lawyer also are you have to be on kind of all the time. You're like a doctor. And in many ways, your precision and your attention to detail are the things that make a difference between you being right and wrong. And so being careful about, typos, being careful about the calculation of numbers, because math is still in my life. All of that stuff matters. And people truly believe, your point, you said, people believe lawyers can do any and everything. And they do. Our president of the Speedway, Doug Bowles, who you may know, is a lawyer. Doesn't practice law, but he's a lawyer. The person who was in charge of the architectural design for the Indianapolis airport, the new airport that was built, was a lawyer, not an engineer, a lawyer. Many of the Fortune 500 CEOs who run the biggest companies in the world are lawyers. There are many teachers who are lawyers. There's this wide range of things that you can do. I'm a professor at a college, at Martin University. but I'm a lawyer. There's so many things that you can do and engage in as a lawyer, and that's a great thing. It's a blessing, but it also can be a curse because people think you know the answers to all stuff, and I don't. So, one of the biggest challenges that you have is saying no. No, I don't know the answer to that, but I can get you to somebody who might. But it's a great career, but it does have its challenges at times.
Yeah. Now, have you ever figured out how much Ben Matlock charged an hour? Because
I have not, but
remember he charged $100,000. That was how much his cases were.
I would assume he charged a lot because he was very successful.
He was. And me and my brother one time tried to figure out how much money he made because it was $100,000 an episode, and he'd do a couple of them pro bono. But for the most part, he'd take that money.
He inspired a whole generation. That show inspired a whole generation.
I love that show. Every day it was on at noon every day, and that's when my brother and I would take our lunch and go watch Matlock.
And then Law and Order, Law and Order comes along and inspires the next generation of folks to go to law school.
Law and Order was too dark, though. Like, Matlock was a little lighter, and Law and Order is just like, that's like, you're watching, you're like, oh, I don't know about this. All right, so we got a couple more here. How would someone who's in high school right now best prepare if they wanted to go into a career in law? And what type of personality does someone need to be successful as a lawyer?
I'm going to start with grades, and I know nobody wants to hear that. It's not a popular subject, but grades can make it easier to go to law school. Realizing that, there are many people that are going to judge you off of a piece of paper and a number, fair or not. And you want that number to be as representative of your academic ability as you can. You don't want to have a grade that doesn't represent the fact that you're smart and talented. And so, unfortunately, it's part of the game, and you got to give your all in every class that you got and study hard. And if you earned a C and that's the best you can get, that's fine. But if you could have got an A or you could have got a B, you need to realize that's the currency that's going to sell, and that's going to help you get money and scholarships and opportunities from high school to college, all the way to going to law school. The next thing I would say is read. Hopefully, if you want to be a lawyer, you enjoy reading, because that's part of it too. And being aware of your surroundings, watch the news, watch both sides of the news. Now we got to talk in those terms, Brian. There used to be a time there was only the news, right? And we had a couple of channels, and there was never this thought that there was a conservative news and a liberal news, and it was just the news. But now you got to watch all of it, and you're watching it not from the standpoint of taking a side, but one of the things that we as lawyers do is we try to be analytical. You're watching it from the perspective of learning how to analyze both sides of every issue, how to see the good and the bad in every point and counterpoint. And that's what's going to make you a good lawyer. Listening to your friends when they argue. Don't talk, just listen. Listen to both sides, and then wait for them to ask you your opinion, and see if you can recite what both of their sides are and come to the middle, because that's often what lawyers do. We come to the solution that's in the middle, or we come to the solution that's in compliance with the law. Looking for internships. Obviously, they're hard to get in high school, but any opportunity to intern. Teen Court is a program that's here. Reach for Youth, Inc. Teen Court operates in Marion County, I think Johnson County. Getting involved with Teen Court through Reach for Youth, Inc. is very helpful. I've been involved in that program since 1999, and since that, I have, I think, 10 or 11 of my mentees are actual lawyers practicing today. They were all young teenagers when we started, and now they're practicing lawyers. That is a great program to get you involved. Also, any kind of debate program that you might have at your school, anything like that would be also helpful. And then just looking at, even now, starting to visit law schools. A lot of law schools have high school law days. Going to a high school law day, just learning and seeing what opportunities are there and what they look at and what they evaluate. You don't have to major in law to be a lawyer. A lot of my classmates were music majors or psychiatry majors or math majors even, and then they still went to law school. So don't feel like I got to go to college and major in law. You don't have to. You can major in something else and come back to it. But certainly finding out the information out is going to be helpful.
Yeah. So last question here, and get you out on this one. Any advice, general advice, anything like that for high school students? What kind of advice would you give to high school, not career-wise, any kind of advice?
Well, the best advice I would give you is start identifying mentors, um, people who you can have in your life who may not stay in your life. They may only be there for a period of time, but realize that you don't know everything. Because I don't know everything, and Brian doesn't know everything. And there are people who have traveled the path before you, whether they be your older siblings, whether they be college students, whether it be alumni of your high school who graduated and come back, whether it's somebody in your church. But talking to those folks who have walked the path before you can be extremely helpful in helping you avoid pitfalls that come later on. And so, figuring out who are my mentors that I talk to on a regular basis and say, hey, I'm about to start looking at colleges, or I'm about to take on a job and I want to be a good employee, or I want a raise, or I want a different job, or I want an internship. Making sure that you have somebody in your life that is identifiable who can say who you are and I want to help you. The other thing I would say is be careful about what's called your brand. And your brand is who you are. My mentors used to tell me your brand is, if I ask Brian to introduce me to you, what are the first three things that he would tell me about you? And if those things don't match up with what you would want people to know about you, you got to do something about it. Your brand really determines what opportunities you're going to get. A brand is like Pepsi. What do you think about when you think about Pepsi? What do you think about when you think about a Chevrolet Camaro? What do you think about when you think about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? And are those impressions good, or are those impressions bad? Are those impressions that this person's a comedian and a jokester and doesn't take anything seriously? Well, that might be good for a group of people to laugh at you. I don't know how good it is if somebody wants to pay you $100,000, $200,000 unless you're going to be Dave Chappelle. And so, unless you've got comedic talent and that's what you're trying to develop, you got to make sure that your brand, who you are. Do you want to be a mean person? Do you want to be a person who's serious? Do you want to be a person who's thought of as being smart? What do you want people to think of you? And are you doing things in your life to establish that brand amongst your peers and colleagues, your friends, your classmates, your teachers, the principal, so that when they talk about you when you're not present, they're going to represent you in the same way that you want to be talked about. Look out for your brand. Realize that your brand matters right now, all the way through the rest of your life. And you can do something that destroys your brand, that totally destroys your brand. And you got to stay away from those things, whether it's going to jail, drugs, alcohol, DUIs, any of that stuff. You don't want that as part of your brand, because it's very hard to come back from it once you get it on your brand.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's so easy to mess up your life at such a young age, and you get into habits. Like, you can change who you are at some points, but a lot of times you come back to who you are as a younger kid, and that's kind of who you start shaping yourself to be. So you want to make sure you shape yourself in the right way. So
Absolutely.
Jimmie, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much. You have the best view of any office I've interviewed someone at. So that is a fantastic view that I would just turn around and look at every day and breathe in if I could. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Look at that. That is amazing.
Not more than a second. It's been absolutely awesome.
Best view in the building. So, all right. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate it. And best of luck with the everything at the Speedway and through Indianapolis Motor Speedway and through IndyCar. We appreciate it. Once again, Jimmie McMillian, Chief Diversity Officer and Senior Corporate Counsel for Penske Entertainment, which is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, IndyCar, and everything that entails.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. And if I can ever be of any service to you, let me know.